Did you press it on? Test, okay. Test. You have a pretty soft voice. So.
Test, test. Oh.
Oh yeah.
Good evening and welcome to the May 14th, 2024 meeting of the Minnetonka Economic Development Advisory Commission. The schedule and tentative agendas can be obtained by calling the Community Development Department or by checking the city website at minnetonkamn.gov. Copies of tonight's agenda and staff reports are on the podium outside of these chambers. This meeting is televised and web streamed on the city's website. Listening devices are available upon request. If you wish to use a device, please see city staff outside the council chambers in the audiovisual control room. From a broader standpoint, the EDAC attempts to find a balance between individual rights and community responsibilities as they make their recommendations. Individual rights are easy for us to understand. Community responsibilities are more subtle, but the idea is that we, as members of the community, agree to limit our individual rights for the common good of the group. The Community Development Department, the Economic Development Advisory Commission, and the City Council are charged with managing these sometimes difficult balancing act. We ask that you keep this broader perspective in mind as we review tonight's subject matter. Before we begin, please make sure your cell phones are turned off. The items on tonight's agenda, Amani construction term sheet, and the staff report. Can the staff call roll?
Haig.
Here.
Connors. Here. Falk.
Here.
Ramatka.
Here.
Johnston.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
And Duginski Cebulka is absent today.
Okay. Before we start, I just wanted to, though he's not here, thank Charlie Yonker for many years of service as chair of this committee and on the committee. And I also wanted to introduce, we have two new members to the committee. David Haig, and if you want to spend a minute to just introduce yourself to the committee.
Sure. David Haig, pleased to be part of this group. Followed city business for a while now, and I'm grateful to serve on this commission or this group. And I don't have too much to add. I think that's what I like about this group is we're all business. Thanks.
And Irene Connors, welcome.
Yes, I'm very pleased to be part of this important commission. And a little bit about me, I have lived in Minnetonka for over 25 years, so that's quite a long time. And my background is in labor statistics, workforce development, and business communications.
Great. Well, we welcome you and we'll appreciate your input. First on the agenda, we have the minutes from April 27, 2023, and we will not have the votes required to pass that. So for those who were present, if they don't have any objection, if somebody could make a motion to
I'll make a motion.
Let the minutes stand as they are without approval.
I'll make a motion to let the minutes stand as they are.
I will second.
And I guess we don't even really call roll on that one.
You could do all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then we have the August 23rd, 2023 minutes. We do have enough people here on that one. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Or any questions?
I will bring a motion to approve the minutes. I'll give Ken a few minutes to review them.
I was present, I'll second.
Can you,
All in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks for helping me through the Robert's Rules of Order. So that brings us to our first business item. Staff, if you want to bring that forward.
Thank you, Chair Commissioners. The first item on our agenda is Amani Construction and their draft term sheet. Before I get started, I just want to acknowledge Kendall Larson. This is her first meeting, and you'll be hearing from her a little bit later with the staff report, but she's the city's housing coordinator.
Awesome. Welcome.
For those that are watching out in TV land. And I'm Alicia Gray, the Economic Development and Housing Manager.
And I'm Julie Wishart, Community Development Director.
I'm Deb Calvert, City Council at Large and Liaison to the EDAC.
All right, so let's start with a little background on the property that we're discussing tonight. This property and the other adjacent property have a long history here at the city. Back in 1988, the city purchased the Baker Road property as part of a acquisition that was for a planned I-94 interchange. So at that time, the property was acquired, and then the interchange never took shape.
Right? It never actually happened the way they thought it would, but we still owned it.
Yep. Moving ahead, the city owned that property for several years. The owner of the property that we're discussing tonight at 5432 Roland reached out to the city and asked if the city would be interested in purchasing that property. And at the time, the city was looking at, potentially developing this area and acquiring more of the properties. But come to find out, the economy changed quite significantly, and that did not happen. So ever since 2008, and earlier, both of those properties had been rented to households. For several years, the city collected rent on those. Then eventually, the tenants in both of those buildings or both of those homes moved out voluntarily. Was fairly soon after the pandemic. And then we, as staff, took a look at, what are some potential uses for these sites moving forward. And at the time, the City Council and the EDAC and various commissions were talking about different opportunities to produce affordable housing. And so at that time, we brought forward to City Council the idea of hosting some open houses to see if there was an appetite for doing something with these sites. And come to find out that there was some interest in doing some type of housing development on the site, primarily lower density twin homes or something to that effect was the feedback that we had gotten. So following that, those open houses, we did some due diligence on the site just so we could learn more about actually what was kind of going on there, and did environmental reviews, surveys. We also partnered with Better Futures, which is a really cool organization that deconstructs the properties and then is able to reuse the materials and prevent materials from going into the landfill. So it's a very cool partnership. And then ultimately, the remaining structure was then demolished on both the sites. Following our due diligence at the city side, we went out for an RFI. So we were looking for someone to construct something on the site. We didn't exactly have a lot of parameters. We just said, if you're interested, submit a proposal. We did receive a proposal from Amani Construction. And since then, we have been working with them to develop some terms to build a twin home on the site. And I will say that Amani we did get one response, and it was from Amani, so we didn't have a different process to go through to select, from a pool of developers or contractors. So getting into the term sheet, this is really kind of the basis for getting into a contract for private development. It's non-binding the way it is right now. It's a draft, but it really outlines what the intention of development of the site is currently. To start out, the idea in going into this effort was to provide affordable home ownership opportunities. And based on, various conversations we've had in the past, that really means serving a population at 80% AMI or lower. So what that means is that in 2023, the maximum sale price could not exceed $304,700 for a household earning less than 80% AMI. And they can have a maximum income of roughly $95,000. So just gives you on the right there, I have some of the other area median income levels, so you can kind of see what various income levels can afford to purchase. And then I also wanted to just point out for those out there that maybe don't know, the Minnetonka median home value this year is $502,000. So you can see how that would not be affordable to someone at 80% AMI. Under the draft term sheet, the developer would construct the twin home. They would have 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and 1,700 square feet on each side. The construction would commence by December 31st and be completed by next year. That's the goal. Could slightly change. We're just kind of working through it now. It kind of depends on when some of the grant awards are made, but I'll get into that. There's some language in there about if there's a default, the city would take ownership of the site. And then they would construct it as a zero energy ready home. So there's some very specific items that they would do to the home to make it energy ready. And then we went over this a little bit, but the demolition and entitlements, so the city did complete that work on the deconstruction, demo, and cleanup. We did the phase 1, the survey, and then we took care of the R2 rezoning to allow the twin home. And the only thing that's remaining on that side is we have to slightly adjust one of the property lines so that the lot meets the size requirements. But that is an administrative task that we can take care of at any time. Kind of going into the financing part a little bit here, we can spend some time on this. The developer will finance the overall project. The city has applied for and received a grant from the Met Council for approximately $288,000. That money, because it's coming from the Met Council, requires a city match. So what we're proposing is that the city matches the $250,000, which is the appraised value of the land, plus that additional $38,000 to get to that full $288,000. There's also Amani Construction has applied with support from the city to Hennepin County for an additional grant to fill the remaining gap. So if that is successful, we will know in May, then we will have the gap for the city would be much lower or non-existent, depending on a few factors. But that is the goal, is to get to the full amount of funding. So as it stands today, without knowing if we'll get the other grant, the gap is $251,999. Staff is proposing that would be funded through the trust fund, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and that, I believe I said in the packet, had a balance of around $3 million at this point. And that fund is primarily it is primarily for housing use, so it's a good fit for that fund. The developer fee and real estate fees are capped. That's a pretty standard process or way that these deals happen when it's a single family or twin home project. Moving ahead, there's a declaration of restrictive covenants that will be recorded. So we're wanting this to be a long-term home ownership opportunity, so it must be homesteaded and owner occupied, so not a rental property. The buyer has to have an income of 80% AMI or less, and same with the subsequent buyer. And that 80% number is benchmarked to what the Metropolitan Council determines each year. That just keeps it a little more simple for staff to administer over the years. And then I put in there some language that, you know, there could be, if there was ever a downturn in the economy and the current owner wasn't able to sell the property for what they paid for it, they could come to the city and ask for some sort of assistance there, so that they're not losing when they go to sell. Equity. Yep. And then the homeowner, they have to notify us if they're intending to sell. They can use their own agent when they resale, go through their resale. And then the city will certify that the new buyer is income qualified. And then I'm working on, there was some new legislation this year that lifted how long a city could have a covenant. And I'm currently working with our city attorneys to determine whether or not we can have between 30 and 99 years. The goal is 99 years. And then there are some home buyer requirements. They must attend a first-time home buyer class. They must meet with an attorney to just understand what they're purchasing and all the things that go along with it. And then they can apply for down payment assistance or any other type of assistance that they need to help them get into the home. And then we'd like to do some sort of outreach about ongoing maintenance. So we're still kind of in discussion on how that would work. So check in 3 to 5 years and, you know, offer any city loans or other available loans if they have anything that's in need of repair at that time. And then at the end, when everything's complete, the developer would provide their costs to the city. And then there would be adjustments if the project costs were less than the approved budget. And then we would reduce the city's portion of the financing. And that's what I have for you. And I believe Amani's on, Joanne Curria from Amani's on the line if you have any questions for her. And then Shane Redling from Ellers, our financial consultant, is also here as well.
And if I may add, Alicia, just a few notes for the newer commissioners. So a typical process is term sheet first, get the feedback, then go back and write a contract. So we haven't gotten to the contract stage yet because we're still dealing with the terms. So the input that we receive from you all tonight will then transition into the final contract. So that's kind of the order of events, and that might not be totally apparent. Ones who have served for a while understand the process, but thank you, Chair, for allowing me to share that.
Before we ask questions, did the applicant Amani want to make any comments?
Yona, is she on the line?
Good evening, everyone. I am on the line. Hi, my name is Joanne Curria, as noted before, and I am the Chief Operations Officer here at Amani Construction. And just going off of the assumption that quite a few of y'all don't really know too much about us, but we are a local BIPOC and woman-owned developer and general contractor team based here out of North Minneapolis as our home. And we've done quite a few single-family houses and a few smaller multifamily deals in partnership with the city of Minneapolis, focusing specifically on affordable housing, and a few with the city of Brooklyn Center and going into St. Paul as well. So we're pretty knowledgeable about the affordable housing space, how to go through the grant process, and also how to work with cities to make it happen. And we're really, really passionate about affordable housing because it's part of why we got started in the real estate space, was to help our family build wealth because we're a family-owned company as well. And our goal is, if we can do it, how can we ensure that other folks are able to do that as well? And my personal passion and where I've helped drive the company has been into sustainability. So these two houses will be to the DOE's Zero Energy Ready Home Standards version 1, which is pretty exciting, and is the direction that Amani Construction and Development has been going and heading into, and hopefully into passive homes in the near future, but making those affordable has been a bit of a challenge. But I'm here to answer any questions that you all might have on this particular project.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for Amani Construction?
Chair, when you say, I don't understand the term that you use, the zero, could you explain that?
I can spend all evening explaining that to you. But there's the biggest key points with it is it's a high sustainability standard. So when we look at the simplest way to describe it, when we look at sustainability in terms of housing, the farthest, I'd say, progressive sustainable would be what's called a passive house. And so that's net zero. Essentially, I tell folks it's kind of like being sort of off the grid and having your house fully power itself. On the other side of that is Energy Star, which is what most people are familiar with when you have Energy Star appliances. So they take a little bit less energy. The DOE's net zero ready houses, that takes it a step above takes it a step above Energy Star, or a few steps above really, and a step below the passive house. And what it does is it focuses on the building envelope. So looking at insulating the house to a really high degree and standard, which, considering that we live in Minnesota, means that our walls are very tight. And so there's no potential for air leakage in your house, including electrifying your appliances is another option of it. It's healthy building standards. So thinking about the materials that are going into the building itself, along with the air that's being circulated in the home. So there's indoor air plus, and I'm going to take a step back because otherwise I'll go about this for a long time. Does that answer your question, or do you want me to go a little bit more in depth?
No, thank you. That's what I was not understanding, what a zero energy ready home was. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
I have a follow-up to that one. How do you verify your success in net zero through the DOE program? Is it certifiable? How, or what other method?
Yes, it is certifiable. So we have an energy rater that we work with, and we do energy modeling with them at the beginning end of that. So we'll submit our plans, our specs, and our trusses, including our appliances, and they'll go through and they'll create a model of what this house should be. And then during the process of construction at multiple stages, the energy rater will come in, they'll take pictures, they'll verify that what we stated we're going to build is being built to that standard. Then at the end of all that, they'll do a blow door test and they'll prepare. Well, that in conjunction with a report that they'll prepare at the end, which is called the HERS report. And that will tell us the effectiveness of how air is moving around. So in terms of air sealing, and also how energy efficient the home is. And that will then get taken and included with a couple other reports that they'll create, and they'll submit it to the DOE for verification that we have done those homes. So it's actually on the DOE's website. They have a specific section for the net zero energy ready houses, and you can see which developers have been certified their houses and how many houses they've completed. And if you take a look at that, I believe Amani is one of the top 10 in there still of developers in the state of Minnesota.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Amani? I'll ask either Amani or staff was there any thought to whether more units could be put on this 2.25 acres?
I can start with that. So we took a look in terms of spacing and how do we get, well, this goes kind of into our design process, so I'll take a step back. So the first step we usually look into is how do we get a house to fit into the neighborhood and make sure that it doesn't look too different, and that's something that the city had mentioned to us that wanted something that would fit in that space. So what would have made logical sense in there would have been to do twin homes or potentially 2 sets of twin houses. The issue that we ran into was the grading, so the elevations of the land itself, and then with the way that the house that was previously there was located, it would have been difficult for us to have created a driveway that would have been large enough to put 3 houses on there. The twin homes would have been the one that would have made the most sense and would have fit within the characteristic of the neighborhood it's in already. So that was our approach.
We were just showing the survey so that you can kind of see the sloping that, and it's,
Yeah.
again, it's the top portion of this lot that we're talking about. And so, you know, the grades and kind of the positioning of where the house needs to go is causing kind of the maximum amount that you can put on.
Okay, yeah, it does look like a difficult lot. And so most of the, as I see it on this picture, the bottom half, which I am assuming is the southern half, is just going to be undisturbed or open
Correct.
land.
Right. I think that it's hard to tell where the other line is. We
Yeah.
have to move the line for the lot to the north, and then we're moving the lot line south. But then there's still a building pad available on that other lot. It's not very big because there's a big slope there, lots of trees, easement for the electrical lines, etc. So that building pad gets smaller and smaller.
Oh, okay. But will it still be a possible building
Yes.
pad?
So
And
where
so-
the house is on this one, so the old house, if you can just point to the other, so that's gone at this
Yeah.
point, but that's still a pretty good building site, but I'm just saying it was hard to, I think at first we thought there could be more units on here, but when we started laying things out and overlaying the easements with the steep slopes, with the trees, with the, you know, we ran out of room
Okay.
to do a lot more, so.
And there's
But-
also a shared driveway access that makes it a little more complicated on the other side as well.
But it's not like there's a possibility for a second building there in the future.
I don't see it that way.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I have a question for staff.
Yes.
This is a question for staff. What's happening with the land ownership throughout the process? Does the land get transferred with the ownership of the home?
The home's currently vacant. The land will get transferred, yes. It'll be sold for $1 to the developer.
Yeah, before construction
Yep.
is how the contract would work. So the city would say, here are the parameters. We would sell the lot, then the builder takes over from there. And they build it and they do everything. All their construction financing is on their own, that sort of thing.
Yeah, currently the site it's been demoed and it's ready to go.
Yeah, just a question. So if I'm understanding this correctly, there's 2 different plots, and the one that's being developed is the half acre. And to the south and west, that larger plot is not being used for anything and not intended to be used for anything at this point.
At the moment, there is no plan for the site to the south. There could be in the future, but not at this time. We didn't have any proposals for that site.
Great. So it's just the half acre that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's just this portion right now. This portion, I mean, we do expect it will be developed at some point into housing. We just don't, that wasn't part of this transaction.
Chair? So the way I understand it, and I live not very far from here, when you take a look at these gradients on this survey, I mean, this thing is sitting, the other side is basically sitting on top of a hill. And it's got a very steep driveway. It's got 494 and power lines that interfere with the redevelopment of that site. So likely it's going to be difficult to redevelop that site into another residential unit. Is that a fair?
You can build anything, can't we?
Julie's optimistic.
No,
I'm
we're
kidding.
optimistic that we could build something back
Yeah.
there. I don't know that it's the size. I don't know. Here we go.
There we go.
I don't know if it's the same size or the same orientation, but definitely we can fit a building there. There was a house there already with outside the easement area, so it'll just take a little bit more thought.
And I believe during our conversation with Amani, they wanted to start with one and see how it goes instead of having two sites.
Other questions?
I had a question for Shane from Ellers from the standpoint of affordability. When you ran this and you looked at this, did you look at, when you're looking at 80% of the adjusted mean income, did you look at what the affordability for this house would be for someone to purchase this house? And I mean, if you, so $95,000, almost $96,000 is 80% AMI. Fannie Mae is something like 36% PMI, principal, interest, mortgage, insurance, taxes. So that's $2,800 a month. So, I mean, did we take that next step and say, what's the affordable price that someone could pay for this and still live within those confines?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The answer is yes, and the term sheet references a Met Council calculation that considers all of that. They consider insurance, property taxes, what an 80% family can afford to pay, down payment assistance, and so on, and they come up with this calculation every year. That's why it's listed as 2023 right now, because they haven't updated it yet for 2024. But that's kind of the meat of this term sheet, and the meat of the agreement is that restrictive covenant. And the first family goes and buys one of the units. They live there for 5 or 10 years, and maybe they decide to move for whatever reason. They'll be paying down that mortgage. There will be some appreciation in the home, hopefully. There will also be some appreciation in wages, hopefully. And so they'll be getting headroom on the top end of that, if you will, that $304,000 and change. They'll be able to sell that for, let's just say $350,000, so they'll get that extra there, that appreciation in wages / headroom in the mortgage. They'll also be paying down their mortgage in the meantime, and so they'll be able to build some wealth during that time period that they live there. So that covenant is, and how that's written, is really the meat of this. Otherwise, what we're doing is selling a house, and then there's immediate value there. What you're doing is you're preserving a home ownership opportunity for two families at 80%, not perpetually, but for 99 years. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm really less looking down the road and looking more at it from a affordability once the project is complete and the unit is for sale. And what happens if that can't be sold, if the market is such that it can't be sold for that? Because if you look, there's townhomes in that area that are considerably larger than that have been selling for $550,000. So if this is a brand new, half the size of one of those Lake Forests that just sold for $550,000, what's the real market value of one of these, and what happens if the market value when it comes time to sell this is not $550,000?
Yeah. Mr. Chair and members, so the trick here, again, is that the purchase price would be limited to $304,000 today. And so just say in 5 years, this same math that the Met Council produces is $350,000 instead of $304,000. They can only sell it for $350,000. And so the market price that they're going to be able to, so that they can go out and get a realtor, list it for $350,000, but not $351,000. And so it's still going to be affordable to that second family at 80% AMI based on the math that's available at the time. So they can't sell it for the true
Okay, so
market
but
value.
for the city's involvement and the county involvement, this project wouldn't work to sell this unit at $304,700. Okay,
Absolutely.
and the confidence level then becomes, is a 1,700 square foot twin home worth $300,000 in that neighborhood?
Mr. Chair and members, my opinion is that it definitely is. You know, your median value home is, of course, a couple $100,000 more than that. It's always shocking to me when you look at the cost to build. I mean, it's kind of your Zillow comparison. That's why I put it in the memorandum, because we all probably look at Zillow and you see how much it costs to buy a house, and they always have the math in there of how much it is per finished square feet. And you know, this one at 327, or if you include the land at 401, I think the number is. I mean,
I'm sorry, may I interrupt? Sorry. Can you please speak into the microphone?
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
having a little trouble hearing you. Thank you.
Sorry about that. So the total development cost is either $327 per finished square feet of livable space, the 1,700 square feet, or it's 401 if you include the cost of the land. Those are really quite high numbers. If you just go on Zillow and look around, you'll see numbers that are lower than that. The point is that construction is really expensive right now. And that isn't unique to this project, but it literally raises my eyebrows when I see the numbers. But we're working on a number of these projects around the metro, and they're all in about the same neighborhood. And so that's why the covenant is really important, and also the look back, because while we think these costs are reasonable now, what you don't want for, and I'm not speaking about this particular developer or anything like that, you wouldn't want them coming in and, you know, cheaping out on the carpet and other furnishings and things like that, and bringing that cost down only to increase profit. So that's why we were recommending there would be a look back on those costs to make sure that we're all doing what we're saying that we're doing.
Chair Commissioner Ramaka, I just wanted to also add that we are anticipating that the buyer will apply for down payment assistance, so that will help on the entry side. So they could do that on the initial sale and then subsequent sales to get their payment down a little bit lower as well.
It says that the buyer would enter or would take a first-time home buyer course. It's not being restricted to first-time home buyers, though, is that correct?
Correct. There's no restriction. That's the terminology. It's called the home stretch course. It's not limited to first-time home buyers, but I was just on a webinar and they've redone the educational piece on that, and it's a really good program. So yeah, just teaches you about home ownership.
Yeah, maybe we should just describe that before we go to the council, though. That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a
Thank you.
good point.
Any other questions? Looking at this, I'm sitting there thinking, there's probably going to be high demand for this and a waiting list of qualified applicants, because it's probably significantly below market, and that would probably be the same case in most economic conditions for any resales. If you're the one who gets first in line or selected, you've done pretty well, but it's not going to be a big financial gain, because you're not going to make an over gain on a sale, because the sales are limited. So it's a good gain, but and as long as at today's rates, I kind of ran the calculations, it would be, you'd qualify for a mortgage with those incomes, so that seems to make sense. Question, just to get clarification, so the city is providing the lot that is estimated to be worth $250,000 for $1, and then the city would also be providing somewhere between a small dollar amount and another $250,000 towards some sort of, from the housing fund.
That's correct.
To fill the gap.
If the city doesn't, or the developer and the city don't receive the Hennepin County grant, there'd be a little, or $251,000. roughly. So yeah, that's what we're anticipating at this time. There's another small caveat, just to point out that that median or the 80% AMI sales price changes each year. So if that number slightly adjusts for 2024, it could be a slight additional gap increase.
Which would actually allow the price of the unit to go up.
Up.
And thus, the amount that we have to fill in could go down slightly.
Yes, and I'm anticipating the home buyers, allowable home buyer income would go up as well.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, by a few $1,000s.
That's what would drive it, yeah. And the $250,000 estimate for the lot, that's just for the lot that this property is going on. The city would still own the other lot.
Correct.
Okay.
And that was an appraisal that was done a year or so ago.
And the two buyers of the twin homes would down the road be paying normal property tax and it assessed the same as any other property, residential property?
Chair Commissioner, that is one outstanding component I need to explore because the legislature passed some rules for homes within reach properties and land trust properties that you could reduce the tax payment. So I might be able to make a case on this one if it's if it has a restriction, there might be a available reduction for that. So that won't go into effect until 2025, so I have some time to work through that, but if it's available, it would be applied to this property.
And that reminded me of my final question, which was, so we're talking about city's participation between 250,000 and maybe 500,000, and it's hard to know what you could actually sell that lot for. How does that compare to a homes within reach property, which is a similar kind of situation?
That's a very good question, Chair, Commissioners. Typically, on a homes within reach property, Homes Within Reach acquires a site for roughly $300,000 to $350,000. The city will contribute between $50,000 and $100,000 to do the rehab, and then it's resold. So it's significantly less because it's an existing property.
But that's also only a single property, whereas this is two units.
Correct.
And they also get funding from other sources.
Yes, they have a
other than
lot
the
of
city.
other sources, some of which I think are the same as this.
LHIA
Yep.
and, yeah, same pockets of money.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go
Chair.
ahead.
So the gap financing is potentially $251,000 per unit or $251,000 in total?
In total.
So if a motion to recommend this would say that with the understanding that the city's contribution may be up to $280,000, is that accurate?
That could be accurate, but tonight we're just asking for feedback and not a recommendation.
Okay.
So,
So is this then going to come back to the commission for a recommendation before going to council?
correct. Hopefully, April 11th, the next meeting.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
And to fill that in, that's 250,000 of donated land plus 250. Correct, okay.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So we were just talking about land trust homes and, but the twin homes, I mean, it's a zero lot line because it's a twin home. And I don't know that much about how the actual land and property works with twin homes. So is this really more like a land trust situation, or do they own their yard as well?
Correct. They would own their portion of the land. It's not the land trust model in the sense that there's a lease and that portion of it.
Got it. So it's just the restriction that we were talking about has to do with the price restriction for affordability.
It's almost like, Chair, if I may,
Go ahead.
it's almost like the indexing units that we've had on the books for a while where Westridge Market, where we have a maximum sales price and then they get a notice every year in the mail and it says, here's your maximum sales price for this year. Very similar to that model. I think the only difference here probably is the time frame is longer in terms of the years that we're talking about, and the various funding sources as well. And I think, I'm not sure are all the indexing at 80%?
The
Or is
index
there a-
units don't have an income limit,
It's more of a sales.
but there's a sales cap on those.
Sales cap,
There's
yeah.
a calculation that allows for like 3% growth year over year on the
Right.
sales price.
Right. So
It's a little
kind
different.
of more like indexing than like, rather than the land trust. That's what I would equate it to.
And the main difference between indexing and this project is that after year 30, your unit could now be worth like 850,000 versus being capped at that 80% AMI every year, year after year.
Okay, so you're looking for recommendations, but not a approval.
Right.
General feedback.
Or general feedback. Go ahead, David.
Oh, it's my first meeting, so I read this and looked at the data, and at first it sort of made my eyes pop too, seeing the cost per square foot of development, but that's the market. Reached out to Habitat and said, what would you bid this at? Something similar? And they said, yep, that's what it is. And I think that's a good reference point. I'm sure you guys know this stuff, and I'm sure you see that it's real as well, but it just seems like a lot. But then I hear things like it's a zero energy development, which some background on that topic, and I know that over time, having very low utility bills makes housing affordable for people. That's a recurring monthly cost that just is cheaper. So that's another thing, that it's an extra cost, it's more expensive to develop, but over time, that is an investment that pays off for affordability. The other piece of this, it's sort of apples and oranges. While you could buy a house in a lot of neighborhoods of Minnetonka for less than we can construct this, that doesn't increase the supply. And we're trying to increase the supply of affordable housing. And so in a way, it's apples and oranges, right? We could acquire property, and they could be on homes within reach, but ultimately that doesn't solve the principal issue, which is putting more supply of affordable housing into the marketplace. And the data that I've seen shows that increasing the overall supply of housing in a marketplace, regardless of the price point, drives down costs at the lower tier, especially when you're adding units at the margin that are, by definition, going to be on the lower end of our spectrum. So for all those reasons, even though the cost is what the cost is, it seems like a very good plan. And one element that we can try as well is just, this is a new type of development for the city. My understanding is we haven't done a project like this before. And it seems like a really good test case to try this out, and over a longer time horizon, maybe it proves out, maybe it doesn't, but it seems like it's worth trying, at least on paper.
Go ahead, Commissioner
Chair, I would
Johnston.
say +1. That was very well stated. I agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
We talk a lot about affordable housing and how we try to bring our civic workers into the city, and knowing what the salary is of our civic workers. I feel like this is a great first step in saying we want you to work in Minnetonka in addition to living in Minnetonka. So I second what Commissioner Hegg has just said.
Anyone else?
Jerry, I'm always a little bit more conservative, right? But I do see this I see this as, again, an upside, and would be supportive of this.
Yeah, I'll finish with, I'm probably also on that conservative side. And at 250,000, I feel really good about it. At 500, I still feel good about it, and hopefully we can come in closer to the 250, and we seem to pull these things together. So I also like the fact that we're looking at a 2-unit, because increasing density is one way to increase affordable, and I know there's a push for not just affordable rental units, but affordable ownership, and so 2 units. And I like the fact that it is actually designed to be to try and maximize the price point, so that we're not making it a lavish property. And finally, when I think about it versus the land trust, I think there's a lot of value for a new homeowner to be in a new construction property that is probably going to be a lot easier to maintain those first few years than some of the rehabs that have been done. So in that sense, I think we couldn't do 100 of these because we'd run out of money, but it's a really good start. So I think it's a good idea. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Actually, one other question. The process, as you mentioned, might be really competitive to be the first resident or the second into this property. How does that work? Is it first on the list, or is it, I mean, if price is capped, if it's met, how do we decide? Is there any discretion involved in that? For example, city employees, firefighters, teachers, things like that. How does that work?
Sure. Chair, Commissioner, Joanne is on the line. She's had a lot of experience in this. Her team will be responsible for advertising and listing the property on the MLS and then accepting applicants. They will have to meet the income verification and be underwritable for a loan through a bank. And then the buyer will then be presented to the city to make sure they met the criteria and did the home stretch course and all of that. And that's kind of how the process works. And maybe Joanne could speak to how that's been working on her other properties, if she's still on the line.
Yeah, I'm still here. So our process has been typically, because most of the properties that we've worked with have MHFA funding, which has a requirement of listing all properties publicly for a minimum of 1 week. So within that, houses are listed for that period. If an offer is received at that point, then great, but we usually tell folks it has to be received within the timeline. If multiple offers are received, there is a criteria that's followed. The first and foremost is that they are income restricted, that they do have a pre-approval letter from a lender, and that they've gone through that qualification. After that, there's actually a list that has been put out in combination. We utilize the one that the city of Minneapolis has put out because theirs is the most descriptive and has the most detail upon it. And we follow that preferential, which has things like family size on it. Shoot, my brain just blanked. I apologize. There's a couple other characteristics that go along with that. And that's something that we could provide to the city of Minnetonka to be able to provide off to you all as well. But there is a detail of here's how this should line up in terms of if you do receive multiple offers.
Chair, I had one more question. And not to mean no disrespect to the developer, but my question, I guess, is to staff as to what was done to vet this particular developer, that they have the experience and wherewithal to complete this project.
Sure. Chair, Commissioners, we have reached out to staff in other cities that they've worked in and looked at some of their other properties and projects they've completed, and we've been satisfied with the work that they've done.
Yeah, if I could summarize, Chair, so that we have kind of a record of what we're going to do. I think the things I heard, and Alicia can add to it, just describing more of what the home stretch program is, just maybe put a little bit more verbiage on that in terms of the next time we present this. Also, the site plan kind of got confusing for people, so maybe be a little bit clear about which lot this is on versus what would be remaining. So we'll tighten up the maps for that. Also, clearer about when the builder takes ownership. So I heard that, so we can make that a little bit crisper. Also about future transactions and ownership and how does that process work and how does the vetting happen? And then explaining how the home buyers are determined. I heard that question a few times tonight. So those are the things we're going to clear up, and then we'll write a contract after that.
I had one more, the zero energy, explain
Oh,
what
explain
that
that.
is.
You know, we should just we could probably put the link in for because there's a lot of different zero energy options. So there's a specific one that they're adhering to. So we'll make sure that's in the next report. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you to the developer and to Ellers for presenting. Next up is the staff report.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. We will start off with transit updates for the Southwest LRT. The kind of only update right now is around the Shady Oak Station, and we have construction happening around the K-Tel Drive and 5th Street, so that's closed for through traffic until early summer for, you can see, road utility and rail work, but that's the major construction happening right now along the line. Next are general updates, and Alicia already, they discussed that Roland and Julie can talk about some more development.
Sure. I love to talk about development.
I
It's
know.
my favorite subject. Gray Star, as you know, was approved last year. They are in Opus area, and I just received a request to do an extension on their approvals. So we'll probably be taking a look at that at the council level. Marsh Run 2, if you haven't driven by there on 394, it's well under construction. The pier footings underneath the building are going in, and I think they're almost complete with all of the footing driving, and hopefully we have patient neighbors in that area because there's lots of construction going on. We actually haven't moved too much on the Greco project, so hopefully that will come forward sooner rather than later. Nothing new on the park project that's open and being enjoyed by many people. And then it showed a ramen right by Ridgedale is open, so if you haven't had a chance to, we already have some fans here. Yeah, take a peek at that. It's great. And of course, Steve's Hot Chicken opened a while back. So anyway, I think that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Next, some business development updates. Thrive newsletter, the winter issue of Thrive, was mailed out in February, and that highlighted the financial services company Foster Klima, and then also the Spanish Immersion Early Learning Center Rayito del Sol. In addition, it had some information about workforce training available through the state of Minnesota. And then in addition, we have the Elevate Hennepin Business Consulting and then Open to Business. As kind of a reminder, the city partners with Hennepin County's Elevate Hennepin Business Advisor Network to provide business consulting services. And Elevate features more than 38 diverse professional business advisors and specialized consultants who provide professional consulting services, one-on-one business advising, and cohort learning opportunities. In 2023, 56 Minnetonka businesses received technical support through Elevate. And then Open to Business, which has been a long-term partner with the city, is a provider through Elevate Hennepin, and they provided support to 12 businesses in 2023, they provided 61 and a half hours of technical assistance and a lot of staff time, as you can see there. In addition, of those 12 businesses, 58% were female-owned businesses, 42% identified as BIPOC, and then 58% also identified as low-wealth entrepreneurs. On to housing updates. The biggest update is that the rental registration program is now live and working, and we're excited about that.
So the registration program helps staff and the city to have a better comprehensive look at the city's rental market, increase communication with property managers and property owners, and then also collect information, especially like contact information, to have that updated on an annual basis so that we can support various departments to have that updated information. In addition, it allows us to have a better network for communication for both tenants and landlords. When things like last year, we had a lot of updates on tenant-landlord issues from the state legislature that went into effect at the beginning of this year. And so we're hoping that this is one way where we can put information and resources through that network. As a review, this program was first discussed in July last year, and then we had an introduction of an ordinance to council in October of 23, and then we received positive feedback, and staff brought back the ordinance for adoption on December 18th of 2023, and so it went into effect this year on February 3rd. It states we have 83 received registrants, but now we have 100, so as of today. So it's moving and it's working, and people are filling out the form, and it's working well, so we're very excited about that. Next is our homelessness pilot program. As a refresher, the city partnered with His House Foundation in 2022 to establish a 2-year pilot program to help those in need for emergency homelessness assistance. The program provides temporary relief for households experience housing emergency or experiencing homelessness. His House Foundation provides casework and temporary housing in hotels and can assist with first month rent deposits. And they also help individuals get into long-term housing solutions that are best for the household. As of February 2024, the program has assisted 56 Minnetonka residents, including 33 minors, and approximately about $63,000 to support those residents, and so we have about $137,000 remaining in that program. Kind of on the same topic here, we have our homelessness work group and our dashboard. So our collaborative homeless work group between legal and community development and the police department have been working since the beginning of 2023 to address other topics surrounding homelessness need in our community. And so one of the first things we did was to develop some procedures based on common housing insecurity scenarios and figure out which departments are best to be the lead on those cases. And then in addition to that, the work group created an internal homelessness dashboard to track homelessness data and understand who's receiving resources. And so the police department developed that dashboard and the intake form. And so we've been utilizing it since May of 2023 and has now helped staff identify now actually 29 potential homeless situations and provide resources to those individuals and families. Also, we have rental assistance still. We partner with ICA to provide emergency rental assistance to those experiencing a financial crisis. And as of September of 2023, 211 households have received assistance, about $280,000 in rental assistance. The average assistance per household was about $1,300, and we have approximately $19,000 left in the fund, but an additional $50,000 was allocated in 2023 towards rental assistance. And we also, as another big refresher, last year was a big year in state legislature for housing and homelessness investment, with about $2.6 billion in investment to address housing stability and homelessness issues and provide services and support. So a lot of that money is now being put into
a lot of funds now, as you can see in the on the slide, where all that money was going across the state. But now the 2024 legislative session is now in session, and staff is continuing to monitor housing policy related items. I don't know if Julie, if there was anything that you wanted to, not talking about it today. Perfect. But yeah, I think that's all for the housing and staff report updates.
Does anybody have any questions on the staff report? Looking at the homelessness section, it's a hard word to say, where we allocated funds and 56 families or 56 Minnetonka residents were helped. I could see it being valuable both to this group and potentially other groups of having a couple of example stories of how that actually worked out, because it's something that most of us are lucky enough not to see, and it really feels like, as much as I wasn't sure about supporting allocating those funds, it feels like it's a really good use of funds, and that it really helps out some people when they're in a bad way. So a couple of examples would really be helpful, I think. With that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Just wait, we have to invite you tomorrow to the State of the City.
Yes, State of the City at,
Yeah.
is it 11:30?
11:30 over at the Marsh. If you're a walker, we'd love for you to park here and walk across if you're so inclined.
Okay.
Just to leave a little bit more room for people to park at the facility. 11:30, the food vendors will be out, so it's, again, Taste of Minnetonka, and I won't tell you who. You can be surprised when you get there. And then the focus really is business. So it's of interest to the EDAC. We've got 5 panelists who have varying business backgrounds in Minnetonka, from Cargill to, I'm going to leave somebody out, sorry. It's the representative from Cargill, Tonkadale Nursery, General Store, Unmapped Brewing, and one more. I forgot the 5th. So it's going to be a really good conversation between the mayor and these businesses, and we got some great video work to show you. So it'll be an exciting time. If you can't come, join us online. It's all live stream, so if you can't leave work or just can't get to the facility, it's all live for you to look at. So.
And a
then,
chance to visit the Marsh for those who haven't.
Yeah, and there'll be tours if you haven't been there before as
great.
well. So. And then our next meeting is April 11th, and we do have
11th.
agenda items
Yes,
right now.
April 11th, we'll have the contract for Amani back to you, and then also for Habitat. So we'll be taking a look at that, Minnetonka Mills.
With that, a motion to adjourn, Chair.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All opposed can stay.
You can stay. Thank you.